Eżis semmija ta' Radio Marija jiena Rosalba l-darbohra nsellmilkom u nistedinkom issegwu il-programm Naturali. Ftit minuti ta' tarif dwar il-ħolqien ta' madwarna. Dan il-programm qed jittella minn Radio Marija b'kollaborazzjoni ma' Birdlife Malta u produzzjoni ta' Jason Aloisio. Fl-intervista li għamel l-lum Jason Aloisio sejrin niltaqgħu ma' Nial Hatch minn Birdwatch Ireland u Nial tkellem ma' Jason dwar kif tajra tal-priża Il-Bagħdan Ikħal bl-Ingliż Hen Harrier qiegħda tinqered ħtija ta' miżinformazzjoni fost is-sidien tal-art. Nisimgħu b'attenzjoni.
So, Nial, what exactly is a Hen Harrier and how many live in Ireland and why are they so important?
Well, the hen harrier is a bird of prey. It's quite a large bird of prey, so it has a wingspan of about a metre or more. And we have about 120 pairs of them nesting in Ireland at the moment. So it's quite a rare bird, that you don't see them very commonly in Ireland. But in terms of the European population, that's actually quite important. The hen harrier is a bird that really likes marginal land. It doesn't really come into contact with people in towns or in cities, or even in most farmland. It likes bogland habitat, at least in Ireland. So very wet, marshy ground with lots of heather, very often up high in the mountains. So it's a bird that until recently wasn't really coming into contact much with people. So that's why I think the Irish population was able to survive so well and why it was so important. And then what happens with them, they tend to move towards the coasts in the winter. So they breed in the upland bogs, but in the winter they move to the coasts. And we also get some additional birds coming in from places like Britain and France to spend the winter in Ireland. And they often go to the south coast. So that's when most bird watchers see them, because they're not in such remote areas. But apart from that, they're hard to find.
The problem with hen harriers is mainly because of some farmers and landlords. Why are they so unpopular, at least with some of these people?
Well, there's been a lot of controversy in our neighbouring island in Britain over the last couple of years with hen harriers, because people have been persecuting them because of grouse hunting for red grouse, that they would catch the chicks, and so a lot of landowners didn't want them on their land. In Ireland, the problem is completely different. We have grouse in Ireland, but they're not hunted really commercially, so they're not seen as a problem there at all. The problem is that a lot of landowners are worried that if they have hen harriers nesting on their land, that will lead to the land being designated for conservation. So in this case, it's Natura 2000 sites actually have been causing problems for the bird, because in many cases mistakenly, a lot of the landowners believe that if they have hen harriers in their land, it means they won't be able to farm as they normally do, or to build houses, and so or indeed to plant trees.
Which is not true, in fact.
It's not true, in fact. No, absolutely. There are some restrictions on what can be done, but in fact, the hen harriers depend on proper management of that habitat. So proper farming can actually really benefit the bird and benefit the farmer as well. So it's a really unfortunate situation. A lot of people believe this misinformation.
Yeah, so the problem is mainly one of lack of proper information.
Yes.
About what these Natura 2000 sites are all about.
Exactly. People see them as a threat to their livelihoods in many cases, and see them as where the government and the European Union is trying to impose rules and regulations on them, when in fact when people have these birds on their land, they can actually be paid money to preserve them, and it really doesn't impact on traditional Irish farming methods. In Birdwatch Ireland, our message actually is that if you have hen harriers on your land, it's a great way to benefit and promote traditional farming methods in Ireland that are part of our culture that go back centuries.
Okay, so we also often hear about the benefits of forests, especially in a country like Malta, which still lacks suitable tree cover.
Yes.
But would planting more forests help the hen harrier?
No, and in this case not. I mean, Ireland and Malta are similar in one big respect, in that we have very few forests and trees as well in Ireland.
Even Ireland?
Ireland has one of the lowest amounts of forest cover in the whole European Union. And of course, historically, if you go back many centuries, Ireland would have been covered in forests, but they were all felled a long time ago. So we have a very small amount of forest cover. And as a conservation charity, we want to see more forests. But the one areas that were never forested were the boglands. The ground is just too wet and soft. And that's where the hen harrier lives. So what's happening in many areas where the hen harrier breeds is that farmers are putting in plantations of forests, not native forests, but usually pine trees that grow very, very quickly, and spruce trees as well. and unfortunately that destroys the habitat that the hen harrier needs. They need large open areas of moorland and bogland, and if you break that up with pockets and patches of forest and woodland, it means that the bird doesn't see it as an attractive habitat anymore. So they're very unusual birds. They nest on the ground. They don't want to be near the trees at all, and also the food that they eat, they mainly feed on small birds, a bird called a meadow pipit, which is very common in Ireland, and other small birds like that, and they don't want to live in that habitat either. So when you have forest in an area, it destroys the bogland, and it also changes the acidity of the soil, which means that all the different biodiversity that normally lives there just can't live there anymore. So it's a big problem. So in Ireland, we want definitely to see more forests, but in the right places.
The right places. Okay. And now you've made several references to peat bogs.
Yes.
Can you explain to our listeners what a peat bog is? Because most listeners would be familiar with peat, especially if they're gardeners.
Yes.
But what is a peat bog?
So the peat that you might be familiar with in your gardens, that comes from our peat bogs, and it's actually exported quite a lot in Ireland. So peat, it's something that forms in very, very wet, boggy, marshy type conditions. And it's ancient plants, basically. It's sort of an intermediate stage between plants being a living plant and turning into coal, which takes many millennia. After about 10,000 years, what happened is that material has rotted down and then it's compacted to produce a really rich, dark soil. It's very nutritious, so it's often used in gardens. But one of the big things that it's used for in Ireland particularly is fuel, because people dig it, and have done this for centuries. They dig it up and then they dry it, and then you can burn it at home. But it's become a big industry now. There's even power stations for generating electricity in Ireland that are fueled with this substance. And the problem with that is that it's a fossil fuel. It produces a lot of carbon dioxide, but also it takes a very long time for that habitat to regenerate, at least 10,000 years. And so it took such a long time to form, and that means that all the different plant and animal communities that depend on it, that are so unique, are really threatened. So we have a bird, for example, in Ireland called the curlew. It's a wading bird, it's a big long curved beak, and its population has completely collapsed in Ireland over the last 2 or 3 decades because mainly of this turf cutting. And it's a big problem. And whereas once, farmers and landowners, they would go out, they'd cut a small amount for themselves and for their families, that was okay. Now we have huge machines just basically mining these bogs and destroying them. And it's terrible, because in many cases these bogs are supposed to be protected, but it's ignored a lot of the time in Ireland, and we're very worried about that.
And is the European Union doing something to protect these peat bogs, which on paper, as you're saying, they're already protected, but yes, these regulations are being flawed, sort of?
Yes, we would certainly like to see the European Union doing a lot more. The protection does exist there on paper, but the Irish government and the European Commission aren't enforcing that protection correctly. Within Ireland, it's a very sensitive political issue. We have politicians, and even one MEP who've been elected just solely on the platform of preventing anyone stopping people cutting turf. There's been clashes with the police, who seem reluctant to stop the cutters. So it's a big problem. So even in Natura 2000 sites, which have full protection under the law, cutting goes ahead, and the government in many ways turn a blind eye to it. And it seems a problem that the European Commission don't really want to tackle either. So it's very difficult for Birdwatch Ireland and other environmental organisations within Ireland to tackle this. We have the law on our side, but nobody will stand up for this unique habitat. We always talk about it as Ireland's rainforest. It really is that important for biodiversity.
Okay, and one last question, Nial. Aside from hen harriers, how are the other birds of prey doing in Ireland?
I'm glad to say that they're doing quite well now, actually. After many years of having a very poor population of birds of prey in Ireland, we're really starting to see them come back.
How many different species have you got of birds of prey?
Well, we have in the winter we have more than in the summer, but we have about 10 breeding species now in Ireland, which is great. The most common would be a bird called the sparrowhawk, which lives in woodlands, and that often comes down to people's gardens. We have the kestrel, which often hovers at the side of the road, so people notice that. But one of the big success stories has been the peregrine falcon, the Maltese falcon, I suppose. And that really has come back in big numbers to Ireland, and luckily did it itself. We didn't need to do any reintroduction. The numbers have built up to what they used to be before the big crash in the 1940s and 50s and 60s was caused by pesticides. So that's fantastic. But we're seeing new birds coming in too. The buzzard, which is quite a large bird of prey. When I was a child, you would never see this in Ireland, and now I see them every day over my house, and it's a big bird, wingspan of 1 metre. wonderful bird to have around because they catch rats and rabbits, which cause a lot of problems in farms in Ireland. So whereas before a lot of the landowners and farmers would have been frightened of these birds and thought they would pose a risk to their livestock, now most people realise that actually they're nothing but a benefit. So it's great to see that. And also we've had reintroduction campaigns. We've brought back eagles, white-tailed eagles and golden eagles, and another bird, the red kite, are back in Ireland now. So it's really nice. We're getting more and more people getting enthusiastic about birds of prey, and also about owls at night too. Barn owls are starting to do better. So actually, apart from the hen harrier story, which is a bit negative, apart from that, when it comes to birds of prey, it's all positive in Ireland.
It's very good.
Mela kif għadna kif smajna fir-Repubblika Irlandiża jbejtu 10 speċi ta' tajr tal-priża li fosthom insibu l-Bagħdan Ikħal. Din it-tajra jda tonqos ħtija tal-persekuzzjoni minn xi sidien tal-art. Bħal pajjiżi l-oħra fl-Unjoni Ewropea, persentaġġ tal-art ġiet protetta permezz tal-iskema Natura 2000. Xi bdiewa u sidien ħasbu li dan sar minħabba li fihom ibejjed il-Bagħdan Ikħal u li l-art tagħhom se ssir riserva naturali. Il-verità hi xort oħra, għaliex il-Bagħdan Ikħal ma jħollx u jorbot jekk art issirx parti minn Natura 2000, u lanqas mhu veru li f'dawn iż-żoni kollha tieqa' fil-bidja u attivitajiet oħra. Al kontrarju, il-bidja u t-turiżmu sostenibbli huma inkoraġġiti. Fl-intervista jitkellem ukoll fuq il-peat bogs li qegħdin jinqerdu brata maġla peress li il-peat jintuża bħala fuel għal xi power stations. F'dawn l-artijiet mistadra bl-ilma tgħix varjetà kbira ta' natura. U għalhekk Birdwatch Ireland qiegħda taħdem biex il-peat bogs li fadal jiġu protetti kif titlob il-liġi Irlandiża u dik Ewropea. Mela permezz ta' dak it-tarif interessanti wasalna fit-tmiem programm ieħor Naturali, programm imtella minn Radio Marija b'kollaborazzjoni ma' BirdLife Malta. Ifakkarkom li dan il-programm jixxandar l-ewwel darba il-ġimgħa fit-8:15 filgħaxija u jiġi mtenni tlieta fit-3:30 ta' filgħodu. Jiena Rosalba nirringrazzjakom tal-attenzjoni, insellmilkom u nagħmel appuntament magħkom għal bħallum ġimgħa għal programm ieħor Naturali.